I'm talking to you guys about personal branding, which is actually part of the reason why I'm recording this. So my name is Jake Allen, born and raised out here in Las Vegas. Is there anyone else in here that was born in Las Vegas? Shout out to the natives. Yeah, grew up on the east side, went to Chaparral High School, graduated from UNLV in 2015 with a degree in kinesiology. You're good. Did not use that professionally in any sense, more practically. Which is why I think you guys are actually in a good spot with the Cola College. It's a very generalized degree that helps you apply it to a lot of different things that are growing within society, especially with like content creation, digital economy, psychology, and so forth. Also, if anyone has any questions, just feel free to raise your hand at any point in time. It'll make it much easier. I'm a pretty open person. So I came to talk to you guys about personal branding because I myself have rebranded many times. Currently today, I'm heavily involved in NFTs and crypto. I have a research firm called Native. We work with like the city of Las Vegas, Gaming Control Board, small entrepreneurs, businesses to help craft crypto policy for them. I'm also a YouTuber, a podcaster. I've founded multiple businesses before that, which I'll talk about in a second. And I could just say NFT influencer. I actually just got back from Miami 2 days ago, presenting to a bunch of crypto nerds about NFTs, of course. Was on stage with like Mark Cuban and Grant Cardone and a lot of these other cool people. Everyone's just trying to find their own brand within this like ever-growing economy. But just to start off all the way to the back, personal branding, it's something that's very important, and it's not something that you can really sell directly. On my show, right now it's called the Jake Allen Podcast, which is focused mostly on crypto. Beforehand, it was called The Guest List, and I started that April 2020 when the Strip closed down. I used to work at Omnia nightclub for about 5 years, Omnia nightclubs. World famous nightclub. Is anyone in here who's 21 by chance? No, I don't want. So Omnia, it's at Caesar's Palace, has like Calvin Harris, Tiesto, Steve Aoki, all the big DJs. I started working there actually while I was here at UNLV. When I was here at UNLV, like I said, majored in kinesiology. I was in A Pi fraternity. Is there any any Greek life people in here? Fuck yeah. What fraternity?
Phi Delta Theta.
Nice, those are the homies. I lived in the A Pi house, which was like right across the street. And my brand in college was, believe it or not, the party guy. That was my personal branding. Not really something that you could monetize directly, but I realized then that my brand was to build connections, build a social network that could help provide me some sort of sustainable future. And man, what a crazy time that was. So when I was living in the fraternity house, I was also working at Omnia nightclub, and that just like kind of consumed my entire brand for many years. And I tried to pull myself away from that, but I really couldn't for a long time. After I graduated from UNLV at the end of 2015, I started my first business, which was an antique store and collectible store. I don't know if anybody's here familiar with like American Pickers or Storage Wars or any of these like popular shows, kinda. That was something that, if anyone follows Gary Vee with like flipping at yard sales, that was kind of something I was doing for a while. Which was totally off brand. It was not my personal brand at all. But I really wanted to try to pull myself away from that like party lifestyle mentality, the party bros, which still kind of follows me, unfortunately. And during that same time, I got into entrepreneurship, and this is kind of what helped me grow this personal brand and network with different people. I started an app called Chameleon Verify Network, which was a ticket verification app. It's closed down now, but basically it tried to fight ticket fraud. Basically, somebody would scan a ticket, it would tell you if it's real, and then there's a social media component to rate the flippers to make sure you're not getting ripped off. Back when I was in college, EDC had just first moved here. Is there anybody who's been to EDC at all? No ravers in here, huh? Wow. ticket fraud was just running rampant. So I tried to fight that because that was something that I believed in. That business is also closed down. And so I tried to find different ways to pull myself away from this like party lifestyle persona that I had built. And what really got me away was that in 2018, I actually went completely sober after partying for about 10 years straight, doing all kinds of conspicuous activities, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, all this different stuff. Went sober for 3 years completely. The only thing I had was caffeine, and really had to focus on myself to figure out like, what was my personal brand? What did I want to do in the future? And that's when I really just focused on working at Omnia nightclub, which was kind of funny. I was working at a nightclub, handing out drinks, but being completely sober. I was the only person of about a 300-person staff that was sober at all. So it took a lot of grit and focus to do something different that was not on brand at all. And when the strip closed down in 2020 during the pandemic, I was a big fan of podcasts. And does anyone here listen to Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, or is anybody in here a podcast listener? Nice. What's your favorite podcast?
This is one about Star Wars: The Clone Wars that I watched.
Nice. Is it a solo hosted show or is it multiple hosted?
4 people. I can't remember the names that started it, but it's fine. It's good.
So it's good that you listen to podcasts, because the growth of podcast is increasing vastly. So TVs, or I guess you'd say ad revenue on TV shows is about $45 billion a year. When I started my podcast in 2020, podcasts had just crossed $1 billion. I think today now it's up to $5 billion. So just the idea of like audio consumption and personal branding was a big epiphany for me. I had realized prior to the pandemic that a lot of the world leaders had a way to channel their own voice, whether it was through content creation, like a TikToker or a YouTuber, or a podcaster like Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, and even on the traditional media side, people like Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow on both sides of the party, regardless of your political opinion of them. They had their own voice and their own channel. So April of 2020 started a show called The Guest List, which was just a long-form conversational show, so an hour or 2 hour long podcast with different entrepreneurs in Vegas. And my first 2 guests were nurses in Las Vegas. My second guest, Kathy Chow, who's also a graduate of UNLV, she had the first ever COVID patient in Las Vegas. So that helped me grow and build a brand. And after about 150 episodes, it became like one of the top shows in Las Vegas. And I had realized that my brand, my personal brand was something that was multifaceted. There's kind of like a term that I adopt that says something along the lines of like, your purpose is how you view your journey, but success is how others view your journey. Throughout multiple stints of the show, whether it was episode 5, episode 20, episode 100, I noticed that the listeners had different interpretations of my personal brand. I had always thought it was the same thing. I'm just a curious person who wanted to network with various entrepreneurs and kind of learn from them. But some people saw the show as something of a massive success. Some people thought it as an educational tool. Some people thought me as like a celebrity, which I didn't think at all, and I still don't. And that was kind of like the big personal branding epiphany. I had this gentleman on named Marcus Miller, who's a branding expert in Las Vegas, and he told me that one of their staples between branding from a personal branding or a business branding perspective is basically the idea of sales. If you're building a personal brand, it takes years and there's never an ask. How many people here are familiar with Gary Vee? Right? Gary Vee has this. Gary Vee's a very successful entrepreneur, probably one of the most popular entrepreneurs in the world. He has this philosophy called jab, jab, right hook, which is basically like the idea of like you give, and then you come with an ask later down the road. So Gary Vee puts out content every day, probably at least 100 pieces of content per day. And then at least maybe once a year, every other year, he has an ask, which is like, buy my book, buy my sales class. Now he came out with the NFT project, so it's like support my NFTs, which is basically like, I'm just giving you all of this information, building his personal brand, and then you come with a sale down the road. Because if you're a personal brand and you immediately come off trying to sell something, no one's going to listen to you. No one is going to be a fan of somebody who's a used car salesman or the equivalent of that in the digital age. So that was something that I realized very quickly. And when I started the guest list, I didn't know what the actual goal was at all. I just wanted to network with people and kind of this idea of like build in public, which is actually pretty common now. And so it wasn't up until, I guess you'd say earlier this year, I took the pivot and went completely into crypto, because that's where my interests really were and really had been over the course of 5 years when I started investing in crypto early 2017. And now I'm actually I don't monetize the podcast directly. I do it through personal branding of other products. And this is something that I had realized is that, yes, Gary Vee or Joe Rogan, they make a lot of money off their podcast, but Joe Rogan, he's putting in the same amount of effort now as he did 10 years ago. And he only just now started monetizing through Spotify, getting paid $100 million a year through ad revenue or through the like exclusive partnership. A lot of these people who had a personal brand were building other products. How many of your favorite TikTokers or YouTubers have started their own businesses? Like the majority of people do. You see Logan Paul coming out with all kinds of different products later down the road. And yes, they do make ad revenue, but it's mostly built off of the backs of their own personal brand that they've been working on basically their entire life. So when it comes to personal branding, it's a multi-year process, sometimes even a decade. And going in with a salesman first mentality is like the complete wrong way to go about it, because you still have to build your own strengths. When I started the podcast, if you go back to episode 0, it's pretty cringe, I'm not gonna lie. It's very monotone, grammatical errors, the messaging is not really on point, very nervous, and even today, still not the best, but you work to slowly improve yourself every day. So, going back, because I got off topic, sales, right? So when you're building a personal brand, you need to make sure you understand the distinction of understanding the difference between sales and personal branding. And so if you're starting a business, and I'm now on business 3 and 4, you're selling a product, right? So you're selling something that's not just you, where if you're a personal brand, you're selling you. So if in the business world, if you're selling a product, you can offer all kinds of things that you really can't within the personal branding space. You can offer sales, right? Buy one, get one free. You can offer Tuesday specials and a lot of things that you see at like your local Starbucks or local restaurants. You can't really do that within personal branding, right? There's only one of you. And once you kind of lose that personal brand, whether it's like some sort of crisis management, you get canceled, or somebody like goes through your previous history and finds something that you shouldn't have said, or you're in a public space and you don't reach your audience well, something that you build or something that takes years to build in with a personal brand can be brought down literally within minutes to hours just by the wrong audience or the wrong thing that's being said. Within a business and sales marketing, the way that you get brought down is not having sales, right? There's no business that's sustainable that is not profitable, unless there's a whole different conversation about that within like the tech world and fundraising. But just the basic idea of having a business and selling a product versus selling your personal brand is that if you have zero income, then you won't be sustainable. But your personal brand is generally okay if you have no income, right? You can keep creating content, you can keep having a podcast, like you keep coming into classrooms, you can go into Walmart and create a yodeling video and then become the next sensation, right? There's all kinds of different tactics that you can do for your personal brand that is different from marketing. So a personal brand is also something that takes many, many evolutions. Like I said, when I was in college, I was the party guy. I lived in a fraternity house. That was my personal brand, and it reached like a pretty big peak within college. It was fraternity president, felt like I was the popular kid. Everyone wanted to be around me. But then once I graduated college and started working in the nightclub, I was now at the bottom rung again, right? So my personal brand only took me so far into like the next society or the next community that I was participating in. And once you get out of college, your personal brand basically starts all over. You do have the skills that you learned in college. When I was in the fraternity, one of our presidents basically told us, this college, this whole experience is just practice. It's just play. Yes, we live in these like guided walls of college. We get to come into a classroom. You get to listen to somebody speak. You don't even have to pay attention if you don't want to. But in the real world, if you're not paying attention to your job or your personal brand, then basically you peak in college and you can just like drift off and never have another success again. So you always kind of have to be paying attention. And so when you move on past college, we really have to figure out, is my personal brand going to be tied to my college degree? Is it going to be tied to the liberal arts college? What does that even mean, right? Liberal arts is pretty generalized. There's a lot of different things: sociology, psychology, physical arts, education. There's a lot of different components to it. But how do you want to apply that to your personal brand is the big question. I'm going to be completely honest. Most of the people that I've had on my podcast before I moved to crypto and the guest list, which was about 180 episodes, there is maybe 10% of UNLV college graduates that were on the show actually used their degree professionally, including myself. I didn't. The majority of UNLV graduates don't. So then what do they do then? They decided that they didn't want to tie their personal brand to their college degree, whether it was too tough to get into whatever field specifically that they wanted to, or they decided that they wanted to go do something else. Entrepreneurship is on the rise, not in just the United States, but across the world, where everyone's becoming multifaceted. Your personal brand also now extends past your physical presence. Your digital personal brand has almost overtaken your personal identity in the real world. Specifically to the crypto world, but this is also just like in the influencer world as well. I know a ton of influencers who do not act anything close to their digital brand as they do in person. A lot of them are actually much nicer in person, and then online people tend to be a little bit more aggressive. They tend to exert a little bit more of like what's called the God complex, where they think they're kind of like the say-all be-all. They think they kind of run the show because they have 1 million followers or whatever the case really is. But then once you start looking under the hood of that, you realize most of the followers are fake. They're paying people for likes and comments, and that's tied to their brand, right? If they're artificially inflating their digital personal brand, and a few people find out, whether they're like somebody like CoffeeZilla, who's basically like he's a big YouTuber who just like points out frauds. Once somebody can go in and look under the hood and see that a lot of your followers or your digital brand's fake, now your personal brand's destroyed forever, right? How do you rebuild that when the majority of your audience is online and now they've all turned on you? So that's what, in the PR world, this is what's called crisis management, which is that when basically you've been figured out that you're a fraud or you say something wrong in public, how do we go about rebuilding the brand? Most of the time people just kind of drift away and sit in silence for a few years, and then they kind of come back and rebrand themselves as something completely different, and this happens really time and time again. And so going into the digital world, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of repurpose yourself, and you kind of don't have to be, or you should never be afraid to do so, really at all. And so going back to my podcast, strip closed down. I was working at a nightclub. My income was completely gone. Las Vegas was actually hit the hardest during the COVID pandemic. 30.1% of the entire city was unemployed. And I'd been working in hospitality for about 10 years or so at the time. And so I thought to myself, what do I do now? Where does my brand sit? My personal brand in the real world has dissipated, right? I can't go see all of the supermodels that I work with and hang out with all of the millionaires in person. Where do I go next? What's going on? And so that's when I thought about doing a podcast, because I realized in this digital world of personal branding, everybody needs to have a medium of some sort. How many people here prefer Instagram as their social media platform of choice? Just raise your hand. How many people prefer TikTok? How many people prefer Twitter, YouTube? Right? So you notice, and some people just don't like social media at all. Everyone kind of has their platform of choice. The stat is actually 70% of the world chooses Instagram as their primary social media platform of choice, but it is shifting a little bit towards TikTok. So you can now build almost a different personal brand within every social media platform. Some things like TikTok are for shorter content. 9 seconds is actually supposed to be like the hit point for the TikTok algorithm. YouTube is 4.5 minutes, and Twitter is 280 characters. Instagram's kind of like the popularity contest, right? It's all built off of your image and how you look. Do you look good? Are you in shape? Did you do your makeup? What filter did you use? Yada, yada, yada. So you can kind of distort it. So you really, now in this digital world, you have to really understand what is the messaging? What exactly is your personal brand? And you kind of cut it up into different things. And so this is what I realized when the world closed down, was that I thought that we're not going back to this 40-hour work week type of world. The conference that I just went to in Miami, Mark Cuban's actually creating, this is gonna sound a little bit like a buzzword, but he's creating a professional metaverse. And what he meant by that was that he literally said that every single person today is a free agent. He said the 30-year career path is dead. He doesn't believe that it exists anymore. So he's creating this digital world to help people figure out what skills are best for you in a digital world. And the digital world isn't necessarily this like Ready Player One VR type dystopic world. It could be anything from being a service provider on the internet, working telehealth, being an Uber driver, being a content creator, being an influencer. There's so many different ways. And he's basically saying the idea that everybody is their own personal brand. If you watch sports, a free agent isn't only just signed by their athletic skills, they're also signed by their personal brand, right? Do they have followers? Do they have a following? Have they been in trouble? Have they been arrested? Like, there's so many things that are applicable now to you working in the ever-growing digital workforce that isn't just pertinent to your skills applicable to that job. And this is where personal brand really comes into play. And so when I started, after about 150 episodes and people were telling me all of their different perspectives on my podcast, I realized that there was 150 different perspectives of what my personal brand is. And so at some point at the beginning of this year, I decided that I was going to corral all of it and really point it into one direction that I thought was most suitable for me. And that was the world of crypto and NFTs, which we could talk about in a second. And then the crossroads of entrepreneurship, networking, and Las Vegas. I'm a loyalist to Las Vegas. I really believe in the city, super bullish. I talk about it everywhere that I go because I think this is really a city that you want to build a brand in, because it's really it's about to hit like an exponential growth period. So within my own personal brand, specifically, where did I want to go then, right? I had this audience of 50,000 downloads and followers on all these different platforms. Where exactly could I channel it? And today now I just go into different classrooms, go across different stages, talking about kind of a wide variety of things, right? I'm sitting here talking to you guys about personal branding. 2 days ago I was talking about NFTs. I was in Dr. Payal Sharma's class 2 months ago talking about power dynamics on the strip. And so it's been a culmination of the last, you could say my entire life, but really the last 5 or so years since I graduated, to really have some sort of infrastructure, or I guess you say foundation, under what I actually wanted to be. So I think one of the important things in today's world is to just understand where your own personal brand lies, right? Do you want to be a student forever? Do you want to go into the workforce? Do you have a medium of expression, right, with social media? And then just kind of understanding the ever-growing digital economy, and we're moving into this service-based economy outside of a product-based economy, and that's where a lot of people find success. But I just think it's very important to at least have at least one, bare minimum of one, medium of expression. For me, it's podcasting, and now it's growing into public speaking and YouTube, and I use Twitter mostly, which a lot of people don't. But start with one platform, become a really big expert on it, and then channel whatever your idea is. And out in this digital world, you can always pivot many, many times, as long as you really haven't just screwed over your audience or your community. And people will really watch anything on YouTube. I had an intern actually here from UNLV who actually had like 500 times the amount of audience members that I did, and she did like a ASMR electronic calendaring, where she basically just like put 2 different speakers right next to her digital calendar and like stenciled it electronically, so it had all these like whooshing noises, and she had 50,000 subs. And so then she ended up taking that and then going and building an organizational business on top of that. So she started with interest first, and then moved into branding herself, and then into product, essentially. So I guess I could kind of ramble a little bit more, but is there any questions from anybody in terms of branding or crypto or digital economy or sales, anything like that? I'm happy to answer anything. What was your name? Mariah.
I guess, like, how did you decide kind of that crypto was where you wanted to focus your personal brand? Mm-hmm. And then how did you start doing that, I guess? Yeah,
so I started investing. So I graduated from UNLV fall 2015. So 2016 was a fresh start. When I was working at Omnia, one of my buddies was trading something called Forex, which is foreign exchange. So it's basically trading currency pairs, like the dollar against the yen, pound against the euro, whether that makes sense or not. And then at the end of 2016, somebody turned me on to crypto, and that was through my own personal brand of just people that I knew. And so I kind of just followed that trajectory, and I've always been a very curious person. I personally think that curiosity is the #1 skill anyone could possess. From all of the 200 different successful entrepreneurs and billionaires that I've talked with, most of them possess like indefinite curiosity. They read books, they go down YouTube rabbit holes, they have hour-long conversations with people. And I started investing in crypto in 2017, and I always wanted to have a voice in crypto outside of just channeling money in a certain direction. And it wasn't until 2021 when NFTs kind of became popular. I got really involved in, this is going to sound very, very weird and nuanced, but I got involved in this area of this growing sector of NFTs called NFT archaeology, or historical NFTs, which is basically like digital antiquities. So NFTs became popular in 2021, but they actually extend all the way back to 2011. And Bitcoin was created in 2009. And I actually owned an antique store. Like I mentioned, was my first business in 2017. So to me, that was like my aha moment, right? I went from trading physical antiques to digital antiques. So that kind of like relation made sense to me. So then I saw a need within this growing sector to that there needed to be leaders and voices. So I started creating YouTube content and taking my podcast that I already had, which was based off of Vegas entrepreneurs, and started just talking with different people in the NFT space about NFT archaeology, essentially. And after about 4 or 5 months, a bunch of people in the space told me they liked the content, and I got the city of Las Vegas reaching out to me, the gaming control board, UNLV. I host meetups at Blackfire Innovation if anyone's been there. It's owned by UNLV. I host blockchain meetups there once a month. And they all found me just through the podcast and through my interest. And so it was kind of just like following my curiosity into this growing space, and then using the skills that I had to then apply it to this growing industry. And then a community kind of formed around me. And then I realized like, oh, this is now where my personal brand is headed. And it was something that I always wanted to do. But I kind of waited around investing for about 4 years, waiting for an opportunity to present itself. And so you kind of have to be a little bit patient. I know it's tough. When I was in college, I was not patient at all. I didn't want to be in class, just wanted to get drunk, got blacked out drunk all the time because I had no patience at all for anything. And so it just took a little bit of time. But I guess just to your question, it's just following your curiosity. Anybody else? What's your name?
Janelle.
Janelle?
How'd you pick like a podcast niche?
Yeah. So being born and raised out here in Las Vegas, I started really listening to Joe Rogan when I was in college. And after I graduated, I was an avid podcast listener. I had realized that there weren't that many Vegas podcasts, and the podcasts that did exist were people talking about the Strip, right? It was kind of become like this like TMZ Vegas podcast, like, oh, this server's getting fired, this new restaurant's getting this person, Gordon Ramsay's opening a restaurant over here, this nightclub's opening, this casino's for sale. But I realized that there weren't that many people interviewing the people of Las Vegas. And after kind of doing research for a few months, and then when the pandemic happened, I really had this like do or die moment of like, well, if I'm ever gonna do this podcast, now is the time. Everyone's kind of sitting at home doing nothing, and I could sit here and watch Trump just ramble on forever, and I could watch the world fall apart, or I can actually like take this downtime to build something substantial. And I just reached out to my previous networks of college friends, entrepreneurs on the Strip, or just literally just DMing people on Instagram and on LinkedIn. One thing I realized very quickly with podcasting specifically is that even people who have millions of followers, before the podcast, I would message them just trying to get insight from them. Nobody would respond, but then I would message them and say, hey, I'm a podcaster in Las Vegas. I'd love for you to come down to my place. We could share your story, blah, blah, blah. And then they would respond and be like, yeah, of course. How much time do you need? So it literally went from getting no engagement to them saying, hey, here's 4 hours of my time. And I got people like Kelly Fertitta down, the Fertitta family, Wynn family, politicians. I literally live in a 400 square foot apartment. So I'm literally like, my bed is 2 feet away from the table, right? And I'm literally having billionaires sitting across the table from me, like giving me 3 hours of their time, giving me all of their insights. So I realized that it was almost like a cheat code to me. And there was a popular podcaster that lives in Vegas. His name's Travis Chappell. He told me on this show that podcasting is all about credibility. And he says that if there's an audio, but it's specifically a video recording of you in the same room with another person for an hour, you're sharing their credibility. And this is the reason why Joe Rogan became so popular, is that he basically shared credibility with every credible person that exists. And so now he has 4 times the amount of viewers of the next leading show. There was a stat that came out that every Joe Rogan episode has an average of about 12 million viewers. And then the next leading show is actually Tucker Carlson at 3 million. So he has literally almost a 10 million viewer gap on the next leading person. And it was because he got to share credibility with all these different people. So having that realization just only further like fortified the vision of like if Vegas is like this growing economy, there needs to be a leading voice in the city to help share not only the insight of the entrepreneurs, but show the city like there's a lot of stuff happening here. We get so lost kind of in this like, we get so lost in like I like to call it adult Disneyland, and a lot of people do. Going on the strip and partying and sex workers and strip clubs and gambling and now we have sports teams and all these different things. It's easy to get lost in like the temptation, but there's literally 2.5 million people that live outside of the strip. Also including 44 million people who visit here a year on the strip. So my kind of vision was that I have 46 million people I can interview per year. And if that was a city, it would be almost double the largest city in the entire country, right? LA, I think, has like 22 million people. I think New York's like around the same. So from that perspective, Vegas, if you're including the tourists, I've literally doubled the amount of audience members that any other city could have. So it's been quite a journey. Once I got to episode about 60, something really magical happened, was that I didn't have to reach out to people anymore. I had PR agencies, marketing agencies, entrepreneurs, influencers, politicians reaching out to get people on the show. And let alone, I was only getting 150 downloads an episode, but it was because my personal brand had been strengthened, because if it was specific in its geographic location to Las Vegas, everyone said that I kept popping up on their Instagram feed and their Twitter feed and their Facebook feed. And so if this keeps happening multiple times with all of the people who are around you, then they start seeing like, oh, this person has a very strong brand because he's sharing credibility with all these different people. And so that happened kind of around like episode 60. But until then, it was a little bit of a grind and a little bit of a struggle. My first 2 episodes with the nurses, which I released within like 2 weeks of everything shutting down, had like 250 downloads within a few days. And then episode 3 literally had like 5 downloads. And I was like, oh my God, this is going into the ground. Why am I doing this? But a lot of different podcasters told me that you should never focus really on the analytics. And I didn't really understand it until I kind of like had grown past the analytics. And what I mean by that was that I have billionaires sitting across from me in my room, but I'm only getting 100 downloads an episode. But I realized that they don't care about the views, and if they don't care about the downloads, then why should I, kind of thing. So kind of stressing it. And I know if anyone has a social media audience, we kind of get focused on like the likes of Instagram or the amount of comments on our YouTube video, but none of that's really important. It's all about the content, and if the content's good, then people will follow you. And so that kind of idea just became strengthened over time. Anything else? Anybody else? All right.
So I know earlier you mentioned your personal mission is kind of your brand, and how other people view you is success. So I don't know if you shared this already, but what is your personal mission?
Yeah, it's kind of changed many times. I could be very, I wouldn't say cringe. I could just say, yeah, I want to change the world, you know, but what does that actually mean? But all of the different industries, or I guess activities or endeavors that I've participated in, it's kind of ever evolving. From a native research standpoint, which is my crypto business, we want to bring mainstream crypto adoption to Las Vegas. We kind of talked about this when we were walking in, that Vegas has always been tourism dependent for decades, and even with a lot of the politicians I've talked with, they also agree. But we believe that if this is like if this is the digital frontier in a new financial system, this is such like a big opportunity for Las Vegas that we need to bring it here. All of these different cities across the world are adopting various degrees of crypto. That with Vegas, the city of Las Vegas actually wants to go really hard on NFTs. But most of the people who are within the city officials are all 50, 60, 70, have no idea anything. They don't know anything crypto, let alone social media, right? And crypto is kind of just like the next evolution of that. So we host like educational seminars. We do the meetups. I do these now podcasts and stuff like this to help show them, because me explaining crypto to them, they'll never understand, especially when they're at these meetups and people are talking about, selling monkey pictures for hundreds of thousands of dollars and Lambos and Moon and all these different like crypto lingo that is kind of cringe for a lot of people who are outside of it. So I guess from a crypto standpoint, just bringing the adoption here. For me, from a personal branding standpoint, I just want to inspire people to be curious and just follow that curiosity. The world is not really as structured as it sounds. There's a lot of social constructs that are kind of reinforced by fear. And the traditional media kind of exacerbates that. And I think it's important for people to know that, like Mark Cuban said, everyone's a free agent now. Anybody can be a poly entrepreneur. You can dive into multiple degrees of business, whether it's from social media, building a product, offering services, right? I have friends out here who are massage therapists who make almost $200K a year, just going to different places. So really just understand, like, are you profit motivated? Are you legacy motivated? Do you want to make a social impact? I think understanding kind of these like higher degrees of critical thinking for yourself is very important. I realized when I was in college, as I was getting my kinesiology degree, after about 2 years, I was like, I'm not going to use this degree at all. Like, physical therapy is actually pretty annoying to me. And understanding, once I got to the end of my college degree, they're like, oh, now you have to take these other classes because it's been 4 years and the information they taught you isn't applicable to grad school. And I was like, dude, this is annoying. This sucks. And also, most college institutions are kind of like losing their own credibility. There's an idea I talk about pretty often, which is called like the accreditation fallacy, which is the idea of like, if America or the world is beginning to lose faith in their institutions, from education to government to Amazon to whatever, if they're the ones that are issuing accreditation in the form of a paper degree, and we lost faith in them, then what does that even mean, right? Like, why continue pursuing that when Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and all these people say that they don't look for college degrees? They're like, it doesn't matter. It's all based off of experience. And I kind of learned that for myself working on the Strip, working at a nightclub where I'm changing juice, I'm changing ice, and I'm making 6 figures. Like, what? This is so ass backwards. We used to make jokes a lot, and this isn't to like flex or anything, but we would say like, we're literally making more than doctors are, and I'm just changing juice. Like, it seemed like that kind of like, it was kind of like an oxymoron at a time. And so that was when, especially working at the nightclub, which was my last year here at UNLV, was that if kinesiology doesn't interest me, if it doesn't spark my curiosity, then why continue pursuing it? There's so much more opportunity out there. And things like Mark Cuban was saying at NFT Miami was kind of the same idea, is that in the digital world, you're going to possess multiple skills, and it's going to be backed by your own curiosity and your own intellect, more than being fortified by these institutions saying you're the credible person for the job. So just kind of understanding those principles is very important. Yeah, sorry if that was a mouthful for some. Anything else?
I want to follow up.
Yeah,
You guys
Camilla.
can, let this marinate too. So think of some good questions, but you're saying be curious, and you have dabbled in all of these different, areas. But how do you tell somebody who's really wanting to take that next step, but they're just really scared? Like, okay, how do I get out of my comfort zone?
Yeah. It's tough. There's no template to pursue your curiosity. You have to be okay with feeling vulnerable. Like I reference episode 0 of my podcast, and even the first 50 of them, consistently making mistakes, monotone, have issues with staring people in the eye when you're having a conversation. Like there's all of these different things that I'm continually making mistakes on. But since I'm curious, I can then study other people to kind of learn what their strategies were. Before I started the podcast, I actually went and watched the first 10 of Joe Rogan's episodes all the way through, and probably by the end of it watched about 300 episodes all the way through. And I had a little notepad in front of me of writing anytime he said anytime he said and, anytime he paused, anytime he messed up. And as I followed that journey of him, I learned that he was also getting better, but he was also pretty bad as an interviewer to start. And this is from most pursuits of entrepreneurship or to your degree or whatever it is. I think most people go to college because you're just unsure what you want to do. How many people here have changed their degree at all, or changed their major? So 3? 3?
I started exploring as an exploring major, and then I switched.
Okay, and why did you change?
Because I applied as a nursing, and I was like, the summer before college. So I switched to exploring last minute, and then I took a year to just explore, and then I landed in psych.
Yeah, I had friends. I actually also changed my degree once. I went from sports medicine to kinesiology. It's kind of the same, but I realized that I wasn't properly coached going into college. None of my family had been in college. I went because I got to go for free, but it was do I actually want to do it? I didn't know what I actually wanted to do. I was just curious. And I had so many fraternity brothers change degrees, 1, 2, 3. I had a few even change up to 7 times because they just didn't know what they wanted to do, but they were able to go for free. So I personally realized after about 2 years that for me, college was more about the social experience than it was for the professional experience. I had a goal to meet one new person in the student union at the high tables. Is that still a Greek life thing, the high tables?
I just joined a month ago. So
Oh, so your pledge?
Yeah.
Nice. Good luck on that. One of my goals was to just meet somebody new every day at the high tables. That's where the Greek life people hung out. I just wanted to build a network as fast as possible. I've actually talked with Jenna a bunch on this about the reason why I'm helping her with the Industry Leaders Council as president is that the traditional path to employment is pretty much gone. Any job on the strip is through referrals. All my friends who got into professional degrees in the medical field or even at UNLV as a professor, it wasn't specifically because of their resume. It was because they also knew somebody internally. And it's unfortunate that this is kind of where society is headed. But you just kind of have to face it up front that there's a high probability of getting hired if you are a networked person and you have a large social circle. So whether that's just knowing somebody in person or just becoming familiar with them on the internet. In the crypto world, most people are pseudonymous, which sounds like a tongue twister, but it's actually everyone has a fake identity. So I'm actually a public person, but most people are using a fictitious personality. So the person who created Bitcoin their name is Satoshi Nakamoto. They don't know if it's one person, two people, boy, girl, no one has any idea. And that kind of set precedents for the rest of the industry. So it's one reason why I enjoy crypto is that the character isn't being judged because everyone's using a fake identity. You're judging them based off of merit. You're judging them based off their productivity, their expression, their words, their thoughts, and there's no real prejudice going into it because you don't know if the person on the other side's boy, girl, company, black, white, Jewish, Christian, handicapped. You have really no idea. So it's just very important to be networked, get into people's DMs, publicize yourself, express your ideas. Even if you get 0 likes, 0 comment, becoming familiar with not only your community, but familiar with yourself and understanding the skills needed to be hired in the ever-growing professional world that's moving progressively to become digitally based. I know that was a lot, but yeah, kind of come out and just throw it all at you. I hope you guys are ready. I know it is 9 in the morning. Any other questions? Anything outside of crypto, UNLV, education, Vegas? Is there anyone here who works on the Strip by chance? No? What's your name?
Sean.
Sean.
I work at the Cosmopolitan.
Nice. What do you do?
I'm a pool host.
At not at Marquee, but at the resort pool?
Yeah, but they have like 2 resort pools. We go back and forth.
Mm-hmm. And what within the liberal arts college do you do? Or do you study?
Oh, my major?
Yeah.
I'm an English major.
And do you want to go into English, or are now working on the Strip, are you more interested in kind of that hospitality life?
Well, I actually recently changed it to English. I was business admin, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just figured it was practical. And I'm like, oh, I'll get a job with this major, but found my strengths are more in like writing. So, and I enjoy reading things and learn. Yeah, I feel like you can really learn about new things. And I was trying to go into law school initially, but that is a lot of school, so I'm still not 100% sure. I like my internship right now, and they did offer me a job, so I might just run with that. So in human resources. So
at Cosmo?
No, I intern at Northwestern Mutual.
Oh, nice.
Recruiting there, and I really like that. So.
So you've also bounced around a lot: English, hospitality, finance.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is? Do you think it's just based off of the necessity for a job or following your interests?
Just looking for opportunity, really. Just, I guess you could say curiosity. Yeah, just because I'm curious about new opportunities. I'm like, oh, this sounds good. This matches my skill set. Let's go with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just understanding that's like really important. On my podcast, I had, like I said, 180 people from Vegas, and now he's asked this one question at the end was, what does Las Vegas mean to you? 9 out of 10 times everyone said opportunity. A lot of people who come here, whether you're from here or not, realize that you can become whoever you want, whether you want to dive into, the Strip and go into gambling or host or nightlife, or even off the Strip of the emerging tech space, the emerging adult industry, film industry, music, entertainment. There's all kinds of different things in Vegas that are popping up. And there's a lot of curious people out here in Vegas following those pursuits. And most of it's based off of your network. Did you get the internship based off of somebody you knew, or you just applied?
I actually got it through the liberal arts college. Just emailed my school email, and they just the COLA program just had all these, like, the list of internships you could do, and I applied. I'm like, oh, that sounds like, why not? And, this is something I should probably dip my toe in the professional world a little bit. So that's really just, I just decided to do it.
Yeah, I commend you on that, because I'm exactly the same way. I kind of followed the movie Yes Man, where you kind of say yes to whatever and see what happens. Obviously not to that degree from the entertainment standpoint, but that's what led me here, was just following all of these different things, from the antique world, content creation, a web app, now Web3 with crypto, public speaking. You never really know. Does anyone here know who Naval is by chance? So Naval's a popular modern day philosopher. He created a company called AngelList, which is just a list for angel investors. He proposes this idea called specific knowledge. And it resonates with me a lot. I kind of like follow my ideology off of it, where he says that, also similar to Mark Cuban, everyone's a free agent. You have to have this sort of specific knowledge to succeed. He says that if you could be in the top 20 percentile of 3 to 5 different disciplines, you can then kind of find the crossroads of where all that is, and then that's where your specific knowledge lies. No one else can replicate it, and then that's where you'll find a lot of success. So for me, it was, right, top 20% of, I guess you could say, highly networked Vegas person, like large network in Vegas, content creation, cryptocurrency, and entrepreneurship. And that kind of led me to now doing public speaking and investing and networking with city officials. So that was kind of like my specific knowledge, was that nobody else could replicate it. And now it's really led me to doing like crypto, it's called Crypto in Las Vegas, YouTube videos, which now I get a lot of engagement with, and a lot of people messaging me like, oh, I didn't know you could spend Bitcoin at Crazy Horse, which is a strip club. I didn't know that Resort World is using a blockchain for their ticketing platform, or all these different NFT events. And so because I'm the only person who could do that because I possess all of those skills, that's my specific knowledge. So that's also something just to think about, as not all of you will be in the top 20 percentile of liberal arts, of whatever your focus is. What other kind of skills do you possess as well? Is it being networked? Is it English? Is it writing? Is it reading? Is it interpretation? Podcasting? Just something also to just think about. And that also goes on brand with just your personal brand.
So just for a little context, every student in this class has an internship right now.
Oh, okay.
And
But I'm sure they're all probably different internships, so yeah.
yeah, a lot of them don't even necessarily coincide with their major, which I think is nice. With that whole quote of like jack of all trades, and just dabbling in different things. I think it does really make a stronger person. So I know earlier you mentioned that, you know, there's these scandals, people get canceled, all of that. Not to say that you've probably witnessed or experienced that, but if you have, do you have any advice for people? How do they bounce back from like that public destruction?
Yeah, so I've been thankful enough that I haven't really had anyone try to go under siege and cancel me. Before I went And so that's kind of like another way that a lot of people of cancel culture kind of come after you, is that just being associated with them in a picture, right? Anybody who hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, who we know is just like a terrible person, who just was even in the background of a picture, people try to come cancel, even if they weren't directly tied to them or had a personal relationship with them. There's this one person who was my close friend. I don't think there's any way to really protect yourself, whether you actually have to come out and say, hey, I'm sorry I said these things out of immaturity, or I was very dismissive of this because I was following the money or following the influence. If somebody does come out against you, pulling different tweets or posts from your past, I think it's important to attack it head on. I think most of the people who kind of hide from that, it only makes it worse. But also don't be aggressive towards it. There's one of my and just taking full responsibility of it seems to work much better than just being offensive towards it. And we see this happen a lot with comedians who and DJs who've been canceled for sexual harassment of some sort, them coming out and being very open to what the situation was rather than hiding behind it. Most of them actually came back and had a successful career, depending on what the depending on how tough the crime was, or even sometimes people come out and they take screenshots of you, and it's out of context, right? There's only one tweet out of a 10-tweet thread. It's similar of like what I guess say what traditional media does, where they have a 30-minute interview with you, but they only post 10 seconds of it because they're trying to look for that like buzzword. I was actually on this. I didn't get canceled or anything, but I was on this blind date reality show on this YouTube channel called Truly TV, which has like 10 million subscribers. This is when I first started the podcast. They're like, hey, we're looking for an entrepreneur who is looking for love. Would you be interested in the show? It's like, I've never done a blind date reality show. Sure, I'm down. What I didn't realize was that the show's called Love Don't Judge. Has anyone ever seen this show? It's on like yeah. I was on like the front of like Snapchat and stuff. Basically what it does is it's a blind date reality show, and the person, some person who's on the other end says an issue halfway through. So she told me that she was born with HIV like halfway through the date, and they didn't give me no warning, nothing like that. I attacked it pretty head on and pretty straightforward. Some other people from the show literally get up and leave for some of the like entertainment purposes. But our date was 3 hours, and they only used 5 minutes of the entire date, and it was mismatched. They put them in different positions, and yeah, now the world thinks I'm gay, right? So it just shows like it was the top comments. If you go on it, it's on my YouTube channel. It's like, oh, this dude likes dudes, and this dude looks like Adam Levine. Those are like the two most popular comments. But it's because they used it out of context, they placed things in different orders, and they kind of made it how they wanted to present the information. And that happens a lot in cancel culture too, is that they find one tweet out of threads or one post out of threads, and they use it within their own framing context and not out of the entire situation. And so if you're in that situation, you need to attack it head on, present all of the information, because generally most of the information is not completely there and completely blunt.
Well said.
Try to, yeah. You know, at the end of the day, I have been canceled. People haven't really tried to cancel me, thankfully. But there'll be something at some day where you get a large audience and people will try to misconstrue whatever information to benefit them. And people who are on the other end, especially in crypto, generally have a financial incentive to do so, to try to swing the charts into different directions. So you never really know. You just have to do your due diligence and be upfront. That's what most people want in the world, is honesty, especially when it's on the internet where emotion is completely removed from the conversation. It's all text. Like I was saying at the very beginning of the presentation, is that in crypto and on the internet, since there is no emotion attached to it, everyone seems to come off very like aggressive or very frank or very crude and mean. But when I go to a lot of these like entrepreneur conferences and crypto conferences, everyone's complete gem. Everyone's super nice, but it's because you can see their social cues, you can see the body language. And on the internet, it becomes tough at times.
And we do have a couple minutes left, so I want to allow students one-on-one time just chat with you and all of that. But I think it is really important to recognize there's a lot that we can't control. So even whatever we post out there, whatever is like going to be on the internet, it's out there. And we have to accept that, you know, people might misconstrue that or just take little snippets, like you said. So
yeah, take ownership over everything that you do, even if it is out of immaturity at the time of your youthfulness or out of anger and frustration. Just know that it's there, and if you take ownership, most people will generally be okay with it.
thank you, Jake.
Thank you guys for letting me come in here.